They say the last bus of the night is never really empty, even when it looks that way. I didn't believe that, until it was too late. My name's Daniel. If you ever find yourself running for a late bus, I'm begging you, don't get on. The first mistake was staying at the library until closing. I had meant to leave by 9. At 10, a librarian tapped the table and asked me to pack up. My laptop fan whined. My notes were a mess that suggested work more than it produced any. Outside, rain streaked the glass in pale lines. I stuffed papers into my bag and hurried through the lobby. The guard at the desk said goodnight without looking up. The doors revolved me into air that felt like wet cloth. The campus was empty. Buildings I knew by heart pared down to outlines, paths shining under street lamps, puddles copying the light badly. I trotted toward the bus stop, holding my phone under my hoodie. The app said I had missed the last Route 11 by 8 minutes. The next one would come in the morning. I stood under the shelter anyway. That's what people do. We behave as if schedules can be negotiated by hoping. Wind drove rain under the plexiglass and dotted my jeans. I counted how long the walk would take. I checked my wallet and remembered why I wouldn't order a taxi. I had just decided to start walking when an engine breathed somewhere down the street. Headlights drifted toward me, slow for the conditions. A city bus slid into the lane and stopped as if it had always planned to. The doors opened with a long, familiar hiss. The driver wore the uniform and the cap and the blankness of someone who had been awake too long. I tapped my card. The reader didn't beep or blink. Its screen looked fogged from inside. I apologized. He raised 2 fingers from the wheel. Go ahead. I was too grateful to argue with luck. The interior was warmer than the street, but stale, like a room closed all day. I sat halfway down. The bus eased away from the curb. We passed the first stop without slowing. At the second, I pressed the yellow strip. A cheerful bell chimed. Nothing changed. The driver didn't glance up. The brakes didn't catch. At the third stop, I pressed again. Ding. We glided on. I looked at the route display above the windshield. Blank. No next stop, no time. Just a rectangle the color of old milk. I turned to the window and wiped a circle in the fog with my sleeve. The glass showed a city I recognized by shape, not detail. Buildings blurred into each other. Street names slid past too quickly to read. I told myself the driver was making up time. I told myself it happens. Then the lights flickered, a quick blink. In that blink, the bus was full. When the lights steadied, I was alone again. But the sense of bodies remained like a pressure. What a room remembers after everyone leaves. I stared at the headrest in front of me and saw a single hair stuck to the vinyl. It trembled with the bus's motion. I stood and went forward. At the yellow "Do Not Cross" line, I said, "Could you let me off at the next stop?" I tried to sound like a person who believed in normal outcomes. "End of the line," the driver said. He didn't turn. The wheel rolled under his hands without his fingers moving. I turned back. The bus smelled of wet clothes and coins, and faintly of something sweet, like fruit turned wrong. The seats were empty and also not. Third row left. A man in an old overcoat buttoned askew, hands folded. 4 rows back, a girl in a school blazer, the wrong shade of green, fingers wrapped around a pole. Across from her, a woman in a blue dress, hair pinned in a style I'd only seen in photos. Each was there when I didn't stare and gone when I did. My stomach tightened in a slow, deliberate way that felt like a new habit forming in my body. My phone buzzed a false low battery warning and then opened the camera by itself. My reflection looked back. Damp hair, pale skin, eyes too wide. Then the head in the frame tilted slightly away from the lens in the same angle I had glimpsed in the passengers who weren't there. My mouth moved a fraction out of sync. I closed the app. The screen froze on my face for a second longer than it should have, and then went black. The bus left the main road. We slid through an intersection where the lights should have blinked yellow through the night, and there were no lights at all, just a wide darkness that did not reflect the bus back at us. The windows fogged again. I pressed the strip. Ding! I pressed it twice more, as if insistence worked on machines. Ding! Ding! The sound did nothing but multiply my own helplessness. A whisper brushed along the ceiling. Not words, just a shape of sound. It gathered itself, tested syllables, and became a name. Daniel. I didn't look up. The whisper tried the name again, more certain. Then another voice joined it, and another, each soft and patient, saying my name like a rehearsal. Daniel. 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 I gripped the seat frame. The metal felt cold through the damp air. The lights flickered longer. Footsteps moved in the dark, dozens, landing together. When the light returned, the aisle had narrowed by the width of a person. I hadn't moved. The bus had become smaller. At the back door, the emergency lever sat under a plastic hood. I snapped the cover, yanked the handle. The door rattled in its track and held. I hit the glass with the heel of my hand. The bus didn't notice. I looked at the driver. He looked at the space ahead as if spaces could instruct him. The whispers braided into a few strands. One kept saying my name. One recited street names in an order that almost made sense. One counted down from 10 and didn't reach 0. Between them, I heard breath drawn in, held, released. Fog blooming on the windows, from faces that weren't there. Objects appeared like explanations. A felt hat sat on the seat across from me, beaded with rain that hadn't fallen inside. Next to it lay a ticket stub on thin paper with ink that had bled into the fibers. Farther back, a child's backpack leaned against a pole, zipper open to show foil around a sandwich. The bus was presenting evidence that argued different conclusions, none of them good. I stood because sitting felt like agreement. "Please," I said, "let me off." "End of the line," the driver said again. The last word stretched until I couldn't tell if he'd said line or light or lie. Outside, the city surrendered its edges. The rain on the glass streaked into long lines like music without notes. The sound in the bus changed. Less engine, more breath. They stood, not one by one, but together, as if a signal had arrived from a place the bus understood. Hands lifted and pointed at me. Faces turned with the same small tilt. The whispering stopped so completely I heard the lights hum. Air thinned as if bodies had negotiated more of it. They inhaled, all of them, at once. The sound was a long, wet drag, pulled through too small a throat. It was the first breath I had heard them take. A woman in the blue dress slid forward without the courtesy of footsteps. Up close, her face wasn't monstrous. It was ordinary and ruined by exhaustion. Eyelids heavy, mouth learning a word and then forgetting it. Her lips shaped my name with care and made no sound. The girl in the blazer was suddenly beside her, though I hadn't seen her move. Her fingers on the pole had the gray of skin that had given up certain negotiations. I lunged for the front. Hands arrived before I did. They didn't grab so much as include. Cold pressure wrapped my arms, my shoulders, my throat. I pulled and felt only the idea of resistance. The lights failed. Breath warmed my ear. My name was spoken at a distance of inches until it came apart and assembled again, as if being taught to children. "Let me off," I said, and the words sounded smaller than breath. The driver's cap lifted when he tipped his head. His eyes were not for seeing. They were for remembering. "We stop at the end," he said, and the sentence felt used up from repetition. An old man in the wrong buttoned coat reached for my chest. His hand went past fabric and through skin into a heat that was not air. I made a noise that had no word. The bus became one note. Metal and breath and intention harmonized until sound and place were the same thing. I woke on the wet pavement outside my building. It was late enough to be early. The lamp over the door hummed, and in the space between hums, the night felt like a held breath. My forearms ached. Fingertip bruises sat in pairs along the muscle like punctuation marks placed by someone who cared about grammar. There was no bus, no exhaust, no tire streaks, no residue of light. My keys were in my pocket. So was something I hadn't put there. A ticket stub printed on tired paper, dated decades earlier, with a route symbol I could remember perfectly and could not draw. The ink had bled just enough to make numbers look like shadows. Inside, I locked the door twice, then a third time because stopping felt wrong. My phone had battery again, more than it should have. The call log showed missed calls from my own number at times I don't recall. The voicemail count was 7. I didn't listen. I ran water and held my wrists under the tap. The bruises darkened when I looked directly at them, and faded a fraction when I looked away. When I shut the water off, the kitchen sounded staged, like a set built from memory. I went to the bedroom, drew the curtains, and lay on top of the covers without taking off my shoes. Sleep came as a wrong-sized blanket pulled over my head. Brakes sighed outside. Not loud, not dramatic. A practiced exhale. The hallway filled with the layered quiet of public space, fabric on fabric, souls turning, breath shared without comment. No footsteps came to my door. Paper slid under it and stopped. The elevator chimed and no one arrived. I didn't move until light thinned the room. A route map lay just inside the doorway. The paper was damp at the corners. A single line wandered through a city that didn't match mine and ended in a small circle labeled with a word I didn't want at the end of anything. Home. On my phone, a new recording waited in the voice memo app I use for lectures. I pressed play because not pressing felt like a different kind of surrender. Room tone breathed. A stop request bell chimed, cheerful as ever. Then my name, tried on by many throats until it fit them all. Then a voice like warm bus air, close to the mic. "End of the line." I ended the recording. The file reappeared a moment later, as if files could ride loops. For a week I walked home in the rain on purpose. I left early. I sat in bright places and watched buses go past with ordinary faces at their windows. I told friends I had a cold. I told myself I had overworked my brain. The bruises yellowed and then went. The ticket stub warmed a drawer and made the wood above it cool. At night, I woke to the sound of a stop bell that might have been the heat expanding in the pipes. On the 8th night, the building's fire alarm pulled us into the hall. We shuffled down the stairs half-dressed, carrying pets and apologies. Outside, red lights painted the wet street. There was no fire, just a sensor. As people drifted back inside, the shelter across the street clicked its light on. A bus slid into view from the far corner, so slow it seemed to study each inch. It made no sound. It did not throw light. It brought darkness with it, like luggage. The doors opened. No one boarded. The interior lights hiccuped. For a moment, the bus was honest. I saw the wrong buttons and the green blazer and the blue dress and the hat and the backpack. And halfway down on the right, I saw a student trying to take up less space than a body requires. He lifted his head just enough to tilt it away. The stop bell chimed, bright and ordinary. The doors closed gently. The bus rolled forward and turned where there is no turn and was gone, except for the habit it leaves behind. I went upstairs and set a chair under the doorknob, because old rituals feel like railings in a hall without walls. I lay on the couch with my arm over my eyes and told myself I would not check the drawer. My phone buzzed once, a small nudge. I let it be. The apartment had a hum I couldn't place. When I listened harder, it stepped away. People say the last bus is never empty. Maybe emptiness is what it's designed to carry. The fear you bring aboard, the proof you demand that schedules and rules can hold a world together. Maybe the end of the line isn't a place at all. Maybe it's the moment a sentence keeps its promise. If you miss your bus, walk, get cold, be tired tomorrow. Keep the sting as a reminder that you still live under rules that notice you. Because another bus will always come, and it will always decide to see you. If you get on, you will arrive. The only question is where. So hear me. The version of me still sitting halfway down on the right. The version of you listening through a phone that won't die. Don't get on the one that comes after. Because once you're on board, you might not get off at all.